Rube, what's going on with us? We're not having good luck, are we?
Well, considering what some people are dealing with right now, getting a flat on 95 in a section of 95 where there's no shoulder and my tire's shredded. And I'm trying to get over the Woodhaven Road Bridge over 95 and onto Route 13 with a shredded tire. It doesn't rank real high. But between me and you, your car getting hit by lightning, me getting a flat on 95 and in the middle of these horrible floods and everything. And it was funny because I called AAA and they're like, we're really backed up with everything going on. And I was in Bensalem, and Bensalem got hammered by flooding. They're like, it could take up to 2 hours. And I hang up, and 45 seconds later, a AAA truck pulls up. And I'm thinking, man, this must be just going to, I'm in a Wawa parking lot. He's going to Wawa. And he goes, no, I'm here for you. And I'm like, how did you get here? You literally got there in under 90 seconds. And AAA is a sponsor, so I'm telling the truth. And he said I was running the corner, and a call came, and I was like, I'm right here. He was across the street, came over and changed my tire. So thank you to him, and most importantly, made it on time for a podcast.
Yeah, that's the biggest deal. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We're going to get into a lot. Zach Ertz spoke for the first time in 8 months. So we'll kind of go through what he said and the outlook for him this season. The practice squad has been put together since the final roster. So we want to go through some of those players and kind of figure out who might actually help the team this year. And then we have some injury news at the end. Glad you're okay. We hope all of our listeners are okay. That storm was wild. Scary stuff. So we hope everyone out there is doing all right. Rube, but let's start today with Zach Ertz. It was kind of a shock on Wednesday. We're sitting there ready to, we had player availability. That's all we know. And they just say so casually, all right, Zach Ertz will be here in a minute. And we all went, excuse me? It had been 8 months since he last spoke to us. And he in tears the last time because he thought it was kind of his farewell to Philadelphia. The Eagles would have traded him if they could have. They haven't been shy about that. If they would have gotten a deal in place for him that they felt was adequate, they would have traded him. They never did. He was here all training camp, and now it looks like he's going to be here for the season.
Yeah, there's a lot to process. He spoke for about almost 16 minutes, and it's true. Like when we do our calls with players, we don't know who we're going to talk to day to day. They'll be like, all right, Brandon Graham's up next, Fletcher Cox is up next. And we're like, okay, Jason Kelsey's up next, Lane Johnson. Yeah, it's a typical day. Those guys talk every few days. So Ali Waddington, the PR person, is like, Zach Ertz is getting set up, and kind of we all did a double take.
I hit that raise hand button real quick.
Yeah, I think we all did. The gist of it was he's kind of come to terms with the fact that he's here. He's not going to fight it anymore. He's going to welcome it, embrace it, only control what you can control. He said apologies were made, and he had a great camp. And I think that's the thing that can kind of get lost in all this. He really had a very good training camp and looked like the Zach Ertz of old to me. And he says he's ready for a great season. We talked about his ankle injury, which required surgery, which we didn't know about. Dr. Lane Johnson, as you called him, had alluded to it the other day when he talked about how he and Zach were kind of both dealing with swollen ankles after practice. But there was a lot there. And the upshot is he's happy. He seems like he's a good place mentally and physically. And the Eagles have two really good tight ends.
Yeah, I give him a ton of credit for handling it the way he did. It's he was asked about that. Like he has a standing here where he could have made more of a fuss. He could have really forced his way out, I think.
Yeah.
And he chose not to do that. And he said I'm paraphrasing, but he said he cares too much about the city to burn it down. And I respect that. And it's kind of unique timing right now in this city because we're watching what's going on with the Sixers and Ben Simmons. And then on the flip side of it, you have Zach Ertz and the way he's handled the situation. I think he probably did want to leave, but I give him credit for handling it the way he did. And when I say he wanted to leave, it's not that he wanted to leave. I think he wanted to leave given the situation that they're in.
Yeah, and he felt betrayed. I don't think is a bad word, by a contract offer that he believed did not compensate him fairly. He wanted more money, and it wasn't coming. And he's still got a year left. I mean, at $8.5 million. So it's not like, he's in he's in bad shape here. I mean, he's getting a lot of money to play here this year, and he wouldn't have somewhere else. But look, if you believe you're worth 12 million, you get 8 million. Yeah, I can see why you would feel offended. But I thought the pivotal thing was when he said, apologies were made. He used the plural, and it's not like Howie, was. Certainly Howie had a role in this too. I personally think their offer was a little low, but it wasn't outrageously low. It wasn't egregiously low.
When they made it, I thought it stood out as significantly lower than what he was worth. It ended up being too much based on his 2020 season, but we didn't know that at the time.
No, and I guess you are right. I mean, it really was. It really was.
Because at the time, we were talking about him as the third best tight end in football after just Travis Kelce and George Kittle.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still paid. I mean, as far as average annual, he's still sixth highest on this contract. The new one would have made him. It would have kept him right around there, fifth or sixth. But yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, I definitely understand if and stat wise, I mean, he's the next guy after Kelce and Kittle. He was after last year, and yeah. So, but I mean, all that is in the past. He didn't even want to talk about all that stuff. I really like his approach, and the one thing, that the first guy who, I mean, when we were going through January, February, March, April, I mean, I was pretty convinced he wasn't going to be here. I think you were as well.
Oh yeah, I kept him off my 53-man roster until like 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, and so in June we talked to Jason Michael, the new tight ends coach, and he was asked about Zach Ertz and if he's talked to him, and he said, yeah, I'm keeping the lines of communication open. I want him to know we want him here, and that I've always admired his game, and I want to coach him, and hopefully I get that opportunity. And here's Jason Michael and Zach Ertz who've never met, and Jason Michael comes in, and I was just really impressed by that, and that he took it upon himself, and I'm sure Nick had communication with him too, but that his position coach, who he never knew, Trey Burton, had spoken highly of him, who Jason Michael coached in Indy. Trey Burton, his teammate of Philly Special fame.
I think they know.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, I just did what that other guy does. But I mean, that showed me a lot, that he had it's just the professionalism to reach out to Zach Ertz, who at that point was miserable and bitter, and just keep those lines of communication open, and just look, we want you here. I just want you to know that I want to coach you. And
some coaches wouldn't have done that, because they would have said, I'm coaching the guys who are here. Zach didn't show up to the spring, and some coaches would have said, we're not focused on the guys who aren't here. We're focused on the guys who are here. And if you're not here, I'm not, or like, that's not all that uncommon.
Yeah, that's well said. And that's what I was trying to say, but was unable to. But Jason Michael, especially for a new guy, a coach who Zach Ertz didn't know him other than what, he said a few guys had spoken highly of him, very highly of him, he said. So for him to reach out before he even met him, and look, I don't know how significant a voice that was, but it really shows that organizationally the Eagles were doing the right thing throughout the spring and into the summer, to make him feel wanted and make him understand that, we want you to be here, and we're a better team with you here. And Jalen Hurts is a better quarterback with you here. And, Dallas Goedert's a really good tight end. He's a top 10 tight end, but they're different. They have different skill sets. And Zach Ertz, he does a lot. He catches the ball better than Dallas Goedert. He runs incredible routes. He gets open on 3rd and 5, and he makes game-winning catches in Super Bowls. I mean, a guy like that has a lot of value, and especially to a new coach, a new quarterback. And Jason Michael was able to express all that to Zach in June or May. It was actually May. That was huge.
I mean, Zach's only made one game-winning catch in the Super Bowl.
Well, he made two game-saving, well, like one game-saving catch. Because if you have to catch that fourth down, and I still don't know how Nick Foles got rid of the ball. But you know what I mean. So so there was a lot of that. And he's a really, really different kind of guy. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve in a way that pro athletes in the age of free agency really rarely do. You know, everybody wants to leave. Everybody wants to, like, yeah, I got a max contract, but I want a better situation. Well, you know, you paid me $300 million. I want to go play for the Nets or the Lakers. I'm just go to whatever super team they're building here. You know, and it's hard for fans sometimes. You guys come and go. This guy just loves Philadelphia and wants to be an Eagle. And for this organization to make that happen, considering where we were in January, is really special.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone expected him to be back after we saw him tear up last year. So it's shocking to me. There are so many layers to this situation. And the next one for me is the football side of it. I think they're a better roster with him on the team. It's honestly taking emotion away from it. It's tough for me to look at it and justify them paying him $8.5 million this year and in a role that might take away snaps from Dallas Goedert. I don't think there's any way around that. And how do you view that? Because Nick Sirianni has told us that having Zach Ertz here won't force him to use more 12 personnel, but I don't know how that's possible. I think inherently it does. And there's only two things that can happen. Either they use more 12 personnel or Zach Ertz takes snaps from Dallas Goedert. And both of those things aren't exactly ideal to me.
Well, I do think with young wide receivers who are kind of all unknown quantities. I mean, let's face it, Quez had a great camp. He's an unknown quantity. He's got 7 career catches. Jalen Reagor, who knows? Devontae's never played. So there's question marks there. Yeah, I mean, if those guys are all what the Eagles think they are, you're going to want them on the field a lot. And it's tough to justify playing a ton of 12. I don't know. You know, guys get hurt. I mean, guys alternate snaps and series. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it takes shape. And it's a tricky situation for Nick to try to keep all these guys happy. And there's only one football. And you know, here's Dallas Goedert, who I think a lot of people think he's on the brink of a real breakthrough 70 catch type season, and he's going to get less snaps. I mean, there's no
I wonder what he's thinking about this, because it might take money out of his pocket.
He's a free agent. It certainly could. And, you know, they're really good friends, but it's a tricky situation. There's no doubt about it. I think they're just going to have to play 12 more than they anticipated. I think that's going to be, especially early in the season. And, you know, we'll see how these wide receivers develop and how they, you know, assimilate into the offense. But these two guys are known quantities. And I would guess the first month of the season, they're going to play a lot of 12.
Yeah, that certainly wouldn't surprise me. And the other part, you know, Zach said he talked about wanting to retire here. This still doesn't mean he's going to retire here, because if he thinks he has a lot of football left, he's got 1 year left on his deal, and now Goddard's in the same situation. If they have to choose, I mean, to me, the obvious choice is still Goddard.
Yeah, he's a few years younger. I would agree with that. But I mean, I guess that's a problem for the future. And, you know, we'll see how this year goes. Kind of everything else, how he's pushing everything else down, all the contracts. We're going to worry about everything. They're going to have like 30 guys next year whose contracts are up. It's going to be crazy. But, and the other thing, I mean, Zach talked about his injury. I think he initially got hurt in that Saints game last year. No, it was the Ravens game. I'm sorry. The Ravens game, week 6. Turned his ankle and said he needed surgery. He talked at length about it, how he and his his wife, Julie, the soccer star, Olympic soccer player, how they actually rehabbed together at Jordan Hicks' house in Phoenix.
I thought it was funny. You said they called it couples therapy.
Yeah, they call it couples therapy. And, when Zach came back last year, I think he missed 5 games. We could tell he wasn't right. We didn't know how much of that was physical, how much was just he's lost a step. I mean, I thought he lost a step. I mean, we talked about that. He just doesn't look the same. He was playing on an ankle that needed surgery at the end of the season, so he hadn't had the surgery yet. He was playing on a bum ankle. He called it, I think the word he used was debilitating. So that helps explain why he was so unproductive after he came back. And it's really hard to judge anybody from that offense last year, to me, because the quarterback play, the play calling, the O-line, everything was so bad and such a, it's just a disaster on every level. So how do you evaluate anybody? And I put Ertz in that category. So he looks great. I'm really curious to see how it all plays out. The one not so important but intriguing to me sidebar of all this is that he needs.
I know you're going record, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, he needs 29 catches to break Harold Carmichael's Eagles all-time record.
It's a record that has stood for a long time.
1983 was Harold's last year.
I wonder if, I don't know this, and this is something you'll have to look up because I'm not going to, but I wonder if you look around the league, that has to be one of the longest streaks for a receiving yards or a receptions record for a team to last for that long. You would think that most teams have probably had guys come along and break their records more recently. Yeah. It has to be one of the longest standing, right?
I'll get on that during the next break.
You only have to look up 31.
I'll bet Don Hudson still has. I bet Don Hudson has one.
Okay.
Packers. But yeah, that's an interesting point. But yeah, he needs 29. He's got 561. Harold caught 589, and then one with the Cowboys that he doesn't like to talk about.
He doesn't.
So, it's a fun thing to keep an eye on. I'm not really into stats at all, but if you are, it's a good thing to keep your eye on. Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance that I got today and that you can get as well, and discounts that you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
Yeah, shout out to AAA. Got Rube here on time for this pod. We appreciate it.
That's right.
Let's go through the practice squad. It's, in previous years before last season, the practice squad was really like a developmental unit. And it was just like, you have some young talent there you want to develop. You think they could help you in a few years. Last year changed all that. And the Eagles had kind of started to do that the year before out of necessity. But last year, the rule changes really benefit you. You can elevate players to and from the practice squad without subjecting them to waivers. You can protect players on the practice squad, and you can keep a few players with who can be, you could sign Harold Carmichael to the practice squad. There's no limit for 4 or 6 players.
6 guys. 6 unrestricted. Yeah.
So, I mean, and the Eagles have kind of taken advantage of that. It's an interesting blend on this Eagles practice squad of developmental guys and guys who are going to play this year, which I think is the way to handle this practice squad now.
Yeah, it really does make a lot of sense. And it's almost like the term practice squad doesn't really even, it's almost like obsolete.
What's the soccer term? They have like a,
oh, I wouldn't know that.
I should know that. It's like an extra, like part of the team, but not really. I should know that, but it's like part of the team, but not part of the team.
It's really an extension of the roster. I mean, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extension of the roster. And yeah, I mean, when Josh McCown can be on your practice squad, it really redefines what it is. But you're right. It's always been the guys, the young undrafted kids that weren't good enough to make the team. We'll keep them around. We'll coach them up, and maybe they can help us in the future. But now there's draft picks on there, and there's guys who've had success in the league, and guys who've played a lot. I mean, Raven Clark's been, the guys. Jordan Howard is second year the guy's a Pro Bowler and 2-time 1,000-yard rusher, and he's on the practice squad. It's different. But I like it. I think, especially in a 17-game season, it makes sense. Why not give teams that flexibility and have these guys just a locker away from playing, and it makes sense because nobody wants a guy to come in and sign and then have to play like 2 days later, and just not be prepared. These guys are ready. They can come in at a moment's notice. They do everything that the rest of the team does, except they don't play on Sundays. So
yeah, and typically these guys are on a lot of scout team reps. So honestly, a lot of the times these practice squad players have a lot more on their plates in a way than the players who are starters or
right.
backups and playing on Sundays, because these guys have to they're not getting a ton of practice reps for themselves. Their practice reps are for the starters. So then they have to put in extra work to make sure they know their own offense or defense. So it's not an easy job. They get paid well. I mean, and you're kind of around the team, but it's not easy. I mean, these guys have to put in work to make themselves valuable to the team and to try to show in limited opportunities that they're ready to play whenever they're called on. You want to go through some of these names and kind of give some takes?
Before we do that, I want to give people a sense of, you mentioned it's good money, $9,200 for rookies, first year players, $9,200 a week over 18 weeks is $165,600. So that's good money. And then if you're third year or more, which is now vested, right? Vested veterans are now 3 years in the new CBA, I believe, starting this year. As far as pension credit, I think it's 3 years. So if you're 3 years or more, you get $14,000 a week, which over 18 weeks is $250,000, $252,000. Minimum for undrafted rookies is still $500,000 more than that, but it's good money.
And some of these guys will get called up and they'll get real game checks.
So if you get called up, if you're game day elevation, you get paid minimum wage for your experience level, and the minimum wage goes up depending on your experience up to 10 years. So it's fair. It's a fair system. So some of these guys will get 6 game day checks and 12 practice squad checks and maybe make $400,000. It's not a bad way of life.
Not bad. Not living like us, but it's not bad.
Who does though?
All right, let's go through some of these names. The new guys, the new players here. Keyshawn Johnson, not that one. Marvin Wilson and Nick Eubanks. The most intriguing guy here for me is actually Marvin Wilson, undrafted out of Florida State. He was a guy I thought would have been drafted, and the Browns paid him a ton of money. I think it was $30,000 in a signing bonus and another $160,000 in guaranteed money, and the Eagles were able to lure him away from there. That's impressive.
Yeah, he's a guy who had a really good college junior year and a really bad senior year, or sophomore year and junior year, I think it was. And apparently did not have a good training camp with the Browns, but he's kind of an old school developmental guy. And they need some depth at D tackle. I wouldn't think he would be ready to play for quite a bit. And they did re-sign Hassan Ridgeway, but he's an intriguing guy. I mean, he would have been a mid-round pick if he came out last year instead of this year.
Yeah. And he's also a guy I identified. I was surprised the Eagles didn't claim anyone. We haven't talked to you guys since then. The Eagles didn't claim one player. He was a guy I thought might have been on that list. Were you surprised by that? Given, look, I don't think the depth on this 53-man roster is great. I thought they maybe they looked at it and thought, not all these guys are going to get claimed. We'll have a chance to sign them later if we want, after we put players on IR, which they did. So maybe that was their thinking, but I thought for sure they'd claim at least a couple guys.
And what Dave is referring to is just you have to get those guys, though. You have to have that 53 set with your IR guys when you claim those guys. Like, you can't put guys on IR and then claim them and use those spots. You can't. It's like double dipping in the roster. So That would be a little tricky. They'd have to, unload some guys. But they could have claimed somebody who got awarded the claim from a team ahead of them, one of the 5 teams. But I was surprised. I thought 2 or 3 guys. I thought they would claim a running back, a receiver, maybe a D tackle. But they have all those on the practice squad. And again, when you claim a guy, you're starting from scratch with them. And how many guys were claimed league wide? About 20, I think. So it's not a ton.
Something like that. Not a ton. And the Eagles had none of their players that they released get claimed, which wasn't a huge surprise. We thought maybe Travis Fulgham would, and he didn't. He actually cleared waivers, and now he's back on the practice squad.
I really thought he was going to get claimed. It was interesting. I mean, and that tells you that other teams feel the same way about him than the Eagles do. That the 5 weeks he had, it was impressive and it happened, but that's not who he is right now. Maybe one day he'll get back to that point, but I think every team agrees. Because if you thought that's really who he is, you're claiming it. 435 yards in 5 games, 4 touchdowns. I want that guy on my roster. Not one team filed a claim for him. That tells you what the league thinks of Travis Fulgham right now.
Yeah. And he's on there. John Hightower's back. So those are 2 of the more notable guys on this practice squad. I think Fulgham of the 2 is probably more likely to play this season, but who knows? Yeah, let's go through. I'll just mention a bunch of them. Graylin Arnold, the safety / defensive back, undrafted last year out of Baylor. Coyote Awosika from Buffalo, who we knew that this was their plan for him all along, if they could get him through, and they did. LaRaven Clark, who apparently had some other offers, and he decided to stay here on the practice squad and stick around with Jeff Stoutland. Jordan Howard, we mentioned. Jason Huntley, the running back from New Mexico State, who had a really nice training camp going before he got hurt. Michael Jacquet, the long cornerback, who I think most fans were upset that they kept him around, but I get it. Maybe they can upgrade there at some point, but he's around for a while. Craig James, the corner who is a special teams standout. I think he's probably a pretty likely guy to see play this year. Sua Opeta, the guard he played. I really did hit that T a little hard. I don't know what happened there. He played, I think, 8 games last year, 2 starts. Ross Pierschbacher, the guard center who the Eagles brought in late last year from Washington, former 5th-round pick. Elijah Riley, another big special teams player or safety. Jacoby Stevens, the only draft pick they cut. He was, of course, the kind of a hybrid safety linebacker from LSU. And then Raekwon Williams, who was undrafted last year, the defensive tackle from Michigan State. Of those players, Rube, who do you think, or a few that you kind of expect to see play a decent amount this year?
Craig James, I would think he'd be up. Fulgham, I would think at some point, possibly Hightower. I mean, Sua, if there's, you have Landon Dickerson now who's active, but I'm not sure he's quite ready to play. If you need an interior lineman, Sua's right there, and he's played in the league. Like you said, he started games. I think that group, guys like Elijah Riley and Jacoby Stevens maybe on special teams if they need them. But I think Craig James, Fulgham are the 2. You wouldn't be surprised to see.
I could see some Elijah Riley based on how much run he was getting with the core special teams units during.
Oh, and Jordan Howard.
Jordan Howard is another one. I mean, they don't really have that guy. And look, one of these. It's funny as we're recording this at 4:30 on Thursday. They technically list 18 guys on the practice squad. They're supposed to have 17, and I didn't mention Matt Leo. He's an international exemption. So presumably one of these guys is going to get bumped up to the active roster very soon. So by the time you hear this, the practice squad might be slightly different.
Yeah, we might have to do an emergency practice squad podcast. We'll see.
Howie's waiting.
Yes.
He's like, are they almost done? I'm going to announce Michael Jacquet getting promoted.
That's the danger of doing live YouTube podcasts. Howie can watch it, and as soon as we're done, he knows the instant we're done, he can make some roster moves.
And I bet he's doing it. I bet he is. We talked to 2 guys on Thursday who had to be 2 of the final players on the 53, Brett Toth and Jack Stahl. Both interesting stories. Brett Toth, obviously the former Army offensive lineman who, it's a great story. This is a guy who didn't pass protect at all in college. They run the ball like, what is it, like 97% of their plays, something ridiculous like that.
In his 2 years as a starter, they threw the ball 169 times, which is about 6 per game. Yeah, it was 92-8 was their run pass ratio.
It's insane. So, I mean, he's basically, and he has been playing some guard this year, which is a little surprising because he's still undersized in a way. But the work Jeff Stoutland's done with him to turn him into a pass protector and a viable option at tackle is really impressive. And they lost Brett Toth a couple years ago when they cut him, and then Arizona claimed him. And at that point, the Eagles were in a situation where they were going for it. They thought they had a team that could compete right away. And Arizona was a little more developmental, so they were willing to take a chance and use a roster spot on a guy like that where the Eagles weren't. I just think they got in a situation this year where they're like, we're not losing this guy. We've put too much into him at this point.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you the value of Jeff Stoutland, who is the best. He's just the best in the business, and one of the best ever, honestly. And you look at Jordan Mailata, where he is a rugby player drafted in the 7th round. Brett Toth, who never pass blocked in college. These guys are on an NFL. I mean, Jordan Mailata is obviously more than on a roster. He's a really good starting left tackle. And we've talked. I mean, Kelsey. These guys swear by Jeff Stoutland. It was interesting. We talked to. I think you asked Brett Toth about Stoutland today, I believe. Mm-hmm. He was great talking about him and just how. He said there's never an easy day. It was a really interesting quote. There's never an easy day. He works them hard. I think everybody's cursing him out when they first meet him. And by the time, they start getting game checks, they're like, I owe this guy my career. It's really funny. One of my favorite things to do is, and we kind of lose this without being able to mill about the locker room, but is finding young offensive linemen and just chatting with them about Jeff Stoutland in the beginning and then a few weeks in. Because in the beginning, they're going, this guy's nuts. Like, he hates me. Yeah, he hates me. He's nuts. He's super intense. He's brash at times. And then a few weeks later, after they've played in a preseason game or even in a regular season game, they realize that everything he does has a purpose. And one of my favorite things is, and I think we might have talked about this before, but Jeff Stoutland during the week is such a hard ass. He's tough on these guys. And then on Sundays, he's like their biggest cheerleader because he believes that we get the hard work done during the week. And by the game day, I'm not fixing anything. There's no time to fix anything. You need some positive reinforcement then. So it's always funny when you talk to a young player after his first game and you ask him, what'd you think of Stout? And they go, what was that? I was going back and reading some Jordan Mailata stories from his rookie year today. And Jordan, after his first game, told me, I thought he was possessed by an angel. Is that even possible? Not a devil, but an angel? That's funny. Yeah. I remember Mailata's first rep he ever took at his first mini camp. And Stoutland's like, Mailata, what the hell are you doing? He's awesome. And I mean, this team's been blessed with great offensive line coaches. I mean, Juan, until he got reassigned, I mean, he was really, really good. And Jeff certainly is as good as anybody I've ever seen.
And in the middle, they had Howard Mudd, who's one of the all-time greats.
All-timer, yeah. For a couple of years.
How about Jack Stoll?
Yeah.
Another guy who probably one of the last tight ends in, and maybe the Eagles listen to our podcast and our excessive Noah Togoa talk because they lost a tight end they liked last year who they thought they could develop because they tried to sneak him through waivers and he got claimed, and maybe they didn't want to make that mistake with Jack Stoll. Yeah,
although Noah Togoa is now out of work, so
he's on IR, I think.
Could have had him, but yeah, he was really impressive, and it was interesting to hear him talk about how when I came out, and he went to Nebraska, he was known as a blocking tight end. And he comes in here and catches everything, except the one pass that Nick Mullins against the Jets threw like 12 feet short of his hands, but he earned it. I mean, he really did. I don't know what his upside, his potential is, but And he talked a lot today. We talked to both these guys. They're both great stories. I love these kind of stories. And who knows what kind of career he'll have, if he'll be, might not even be on a roster in 24 hours. We don't know. But imagine coming in as a rookie and the two guys you're learning from are Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert.
It's not bad.
How do you not get better every day? And, he said both those guys were so free with so generous with their advice and their knowledge, and sharing just little technique things about, just, running routes and catching the ball, just off the field, non-football stuff. You come in as an undrafted rookie to a new city. You don't know anybody. And these two guys, a 3-time Pro Bowler and a top 10 tight end, take you under their wing and share all the, we call it the keys to the kingdom, pass them down. And then one day Jack Stoll passed those keys of the kingdom down to somebody else. But I never dreamed a month ago he'd be on this team, even 2 weeks ago. And he had really great workouts against the Jets. And he was actually really good in the Patriots week too. And in the game, he made some good catches in that Patriots game. And here he is. Good for him. He worked his ass off to get where he is.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. And it was to the point where I put him on my 53 at the end, because I was like, I think he's made too big of a splash that they're not going to feel comfortable losing him. So yeah, credit to him. It's an impressive story, and it kind of keeps the streak alive. It seems like every year there's at least one undrafted guy who makes the roster. I don't know if you saw the numbers. Obviously, there are a lot more, overall players who go undrafted than to get drafted, but there was a breakdown. I think Spot Track put it out of first round picks on the 53s, second, third, fourth, whatever. And undrafted, just far and away more undrafted players than drafted any other round in the league.
Yeah, that's a little deceiving because,
there have to be. I get it.
Yeah. And plus most teams, kickers and punters and holders are all undrafted. So that's 3 right there. But yeah, they're all cool stories. I think I did an all-time Eagles undrafted team. I'm sure I did in the last year or two. But yeah, he again, he outplayed Richard Rodgers. It's not like this is charity. It's not like, hey, we want to, he was better than Richard Rodgers dramatically. And he won the job. It's not like anything was handed to him. I did like what he said. He said, when I got here, nothing was guaranteed to me. Well, that's not quite true.
Yeah, quite a bit was.
$192,000. Yeah. So they liked him because they gave him a lot of money back when they signed him in April. Hey, it's been a year full of uncertainty, but one thing is certain: Independence Blue Cross can help you make the healthcare decisions that are right for you. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network. Independence Blue Cross. Learn more at ibx.com.
All right, Rube, a few roster moves on Thursday. Not big surprises. One of them was the Eagles put 3 players on IR. Tyree Jackson, we knew that was going to come. He has a broken back. He'll be able to return at some point this year, most likely. Josiah Scott, who has a hamstring strain. And this one was the bigger surprise. Jack Driscoll, the guard tackle, apparently strained his pec at some point either in the last game or since then. And so he'll start the season on IR.
Yeah, and he's a valuable guy. He can back up a lot of spots. Played well at right tackle last year, and again, these guys are all eligible to come back after 3 weeks. If they were not if they were IR before the cut down, they'd be done for the year. Tyree Jackson, they said 8 to 10 weeks. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks, so we're not going to see him for a while. Even at the minimum, he's going to be out another month and a half. I would think Driscoll, I think they said it was the pectoral. It's interesting because a lot of their O-line depth isn't, especially tackle, isn't all that experienced.
Who's their backup right tackle? Is it Dillard? Would they put him there?
I would think it's
Brett Toad. Jordan?
I would think it's Brett Toad. Maybe you can move Jordan to right, but he never got any reps at right. It's an interesting question for Nick.
Last time we saw Toth, he was inside.
Yeah, he was playing guard. I would
and
guess,
with Lane's ankle, I think that's always in the back of our minds this year. I don't think it's unrealistic.
To put Dillard at left tackle and put Jordan at right tackle. I'm not sure they would change 2 positions. Stout doesn't like to do that, but it's a great question.
Yeah, and it's a valid one right now. Hassan Ridgeway back on the active roster. thought he had a good camp, but they know what they're going to get from him. And they're light at defensive tackle. T.Y. McGill, maybe he's actually, I didn't think about him. They have 2 roster spots, so maybe they're going to activate one of those practice squad guys, and maybe T.Y. McGill's ready to come off the COVID list because he isn't technically on the roster right now.
Right. So that's a possibility. Yeah, they got 2 spots on the 53.
And they list Milton Williams as a defensive tackle, but he played more end in the preseason and in training camp. So if you view him as an end, then they are light at tackle.
But they need him more now at tackle. And I list him wherever I need him. But
I mean, but he hasn't played that much at tackle.
No, he's played some.
Not as much as end.
No, not as much as end.
I mean, I'd say 75-25 end this year.
I would agree with that. But again, if he does play, we're talking about, 17 to 22 snaps, something like that. So, but Ridgeway didn't have a great camp, but he'll take up some space. You can put him out there for 15 snaps and he'll be okay. He's played a lot of football. He's a 6-year guy. So I wouldn't expect him to be on the roster all year, but
well, based on his last 3 seasons, that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, he does get hurt, but So, but the right tackle, it's an interesting question. Something we'll have to work on that.
Yeah. You got anything else before we wrap this one up?
No, just hope everyone out there is safe. It's been crazy out there, and tornadoes and flooding. We just hope you're all well, and take care of yourself and stay safe.
Yeah, it certainly was wild. We appreciate you guys, and if you enjoy the podcast, please like and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you guys as well. Please click the like button there and subscribe. That's it. We'll talk to you next week. Game week next week for Reuben. I'm Dave. We'll speak soon.